Most people estimate that over the next 10 years, the United States will add about $2 trillion a year, $20 trillion in debt. The savings, if you don't think the taxes or the tax cuts will cause a reduction in revenue, which I can accept that, and you say, well, the spending cuts are $1.5 trillion. That means instead of borrowing $20 trillion, we'd borrow $18.5 trillion. So the spending cuts are not nearly enough. The example of the explosion of debt is awful and not to be commended. We should be giving them very limited tranches of debt expansion and make them prove to us that they are good with money. But by no means should we give them $5 trillion and say, oh, just keep doing what you're doing. They have a terrible record, so they need more restraint and more oversight, not less.
That was Senator Rand Paul telling Maria on Sunday Morning Futures he remains opposed to the big, beautiful bill, but may consider Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson's plan of a two-step process. House Ways and Means Committee Chair Jason Smith also on SMF. Here's what he says would happen if that became a reality.
Ron Johnson from Wisconsin also was with us last week and over the weekend with me again. And he is insisting that this has to be in two bills, that it's just too much in one bill. How would that fly in the House after you've already passed this?
Maria, it would be dead on arrival. Rubber has hit the pavement. The people and the President of the United States, they want action, Maria. We delivered out of the House the largest tax cut in U.S. history, the largest cut to mandatory spending of $1.69 trillion in U.S. history, the most significant welfare reforms in U.S. history, and also the largest one-time investment in border security.
Joining me now is Florida Congressman Byron Donalds. He's a member of the House Oversight and Financial Services Committee's Congressman. I want to get your thoughts on that. And just a reminder here that Ron Johnson is somebody that said that he wants to go back to 2019 spending levels. Maybe that's a fantasy at this point in the world that we're in. But the Wall Street Journal points out that, and this is kind of where the rift is with the senators, that GOP senators' competing demands risk pulling the Trump mega bill apart, writes the Wall Street Journal. And whether it's Medicaid or green tax credits, business deductions, there's a lot of senators with a lot of changes they want to make to your bill. Your reaction?
My reaction is that Republicans need to decide what we really want to do. Do we want to have the president's tax policy, which the House did pass, which is the best tax policy the nation's ever had, while also taking care of the future financial outlook of the country? And so we have competing interests, amongst senators, but we have competing interests amongst House members. Let's be clear. I got House members who sent a letter over to the Senate saying they wanted to weaken some of the provisions in the Green New Deal tax credits. They want them to go longer, not have them be shorter or eliminate them altogether. Here's the truth. We simply can't afford them. I have members of the House, along with members of the Senate, who don't want to go further with respect to actually reforming Medicaid so that the federal government actually has the right policy where we treat pregnant women, poor children, and poor senior citizens better than able-bodied adults. Currently, the United States treats able-bodied adults better than pregnant women. That is a fact. So I think that, I don't think we're going back to two bills. I agree with Jason Smith, but the reality is that if the Senate sends back a bill that cuts more money, that will be well received in the House by many members, probably except for about 14. And so this is the problem that we have. It's about the future financial outlook of America. That's what we got to put forward. That's what Ron John and Rand Paul and many others are arguing for. The president's tax policy is amazing tax policy. We're going to get all that stuff done.
Well,
but Republicans, both House and Senate, have a major question to ask themselves. What matters more, re-election prospects or the future fiscal outlook of the country?
Well, and that is the conversation that comes up as a backdrop to all of this, or a side note, whatever you want to call it, is that, if things don't go the way for some Republicans that are in vulnerable districts, think of Mike Lawler of New York, their point is that the Republicans are going to lose control of the House after the 2026 midterms. And, it obviously, say what you will about the CBO. There's a lot of debate about their estimates, but they're saying this would add $2.4 trillion to the deficit over a decade. Again, there's a lot of debate about that. But you mentioned something about Medicaid, and I want to ask you about this, because Senator Rick Scott was on Fox News Sunday, and he points out Florida, your state, that Florida is among one of the 10 states that did not accept Medicaid for low-income, childless, able-bodied adults. Remember, they gained coverage back in 2010 under the Affordable Care Act. And Rick Scott said, look, we didn't accept that because in Florida, we believe in fiscal responsibility. Senator Rick Scott, one of the biggest critics right now of the big, beautiful bill. Your reaction?
Look, I agree with Senator Scott. In Florida, we did not expand Medicaid. And let's make sure we get the language correct. What Barack Obama did is he expanded the welfare state to include able-bodied adults. Those same able-bodied adults could have gotten employer-provided health care coverage. And so what the whole plan of Obamacare was to bring single-payer health care to the United States. That was the plan. They didn't have the votes in the Senate to be able to do it. And frankly, we're not going to single-payer. But we've created a serious problem. In Florida, if you're an able-bodied adult, you are not on Medicaid. But in California, in New York, in Illinois, you are. So the question is, what is the better public policy? Is it taking care of poor women, pregnant women, poor kids, and actually favoring them? Or is it favoring able-bodied adults in Medicaid who can actually go to work? And I think that what we need to do is follow the Florida model. Frankly, the whole country should follow the Florida model. But we should follow the Florida model and say, listen, we are going to prioritize people who are truly in need when it comes to public services. That's what needs to happen. And it would save the United States close to $1 trillion over a decade.
What is the latest on your run for governor of Florida, and what is your vision for Florida?
Well, first of all, we have a great state. Governor DeSantis has done a tremendous job. And I was listening to your segment earlier about what's going on in California. There's a reason why something like that will never happen in our state. We've had great governors in our state. My mission is to continue that and make sure that we are a law and order state. We are the free state, but it's also about diversifying our economy, making Florida the financial hub of the world, making sure that children are proficient in core subject matter, that we change the metrics instead of just being at grade level, now being at proficiency. Those are the things that we're going to be looking at going forward in Florida if I'm successful in my race for governor. But we have the best state in the country, and we're not going to look back. We're going to continue to lead and continue to take Florida to higher heights.
As we move into a new week right now, before you go, Congressman, just a quick reaction from you. What is your message to your colleagues on the Senate side who are about to get into some very, likely going to be some very contentious negotiations? And what is your message to Senator Thune right now, who's going to have to do what Mike Johnson did, and that, of course, is rally the troops?
My number one message is we got to cut spending. We just simply have to. And it's not just in the one beautiful bill. It's also in the appropriations packages. The president put out a budget earlier for discretionary spending. My read of it, it cuts about $163 billion. We need, in year one, we need to follow the president's lead. What Senator Johnson is talking about, going back to 2019 spending levels pre-COVID, that's not a pipe dream. We can do that. The problem is in Washington, frankly, the Democrats want to spend more money, and we're having a disagreement amongst Republicans. We need to cut as much spending as we can. Budget reconciliation is an opportunity to do that. And if you look at the Treasury bond yields, the thing that they charge us to borrow money, they're going up. And if the Treasury bond yields go up on the United States government, that means credit rates for businesses, for families, for individuals, they're going to go up as well. Everything is based on the 10-year. The 10-year going up is bad for Americans. It's bad for the working poor. Washington has to cut spending. So my message to the Senate, cut spending. Let's do the right thing. Let's do it now, and we'll win elections as a result.
Congressman Byron Donalds, always a pleasure to have you on the program. Come back anytime, sir. Thank you.